Assassination and Aftermath. Main article: Assassination of Martin Luther King. Earth Lorraine Motel, where King was assassinated, is now the site of the National Civil Rights Museum. Has been to the mountain to final 30 seconds of I've Been to the Mountaintop speech by Martin Luther King. Era problems playing this file. See Media Help. In March 29, 1968, King went to Memphis, Tennessee, in support of the Black Sanitary Public Works employees, who were represented by FSCME Local 1733. The workers had been on strike since March 12 for higher wages and better treatment. In one incident, black street repairmen received pay for 2 hours when they were sent home because of bad weather, but white employees were paid for the full day. In April 3, King addressed a rally and delivered his I've Been to the Mountaintop address at Mason Temple, the world headquarters of the Church of God in Christ. King's flight to Memphis had been delayed by a bomb threat against his plane. In the prophetic oration of the last speech of his life, in reference to the bomb threat, King said the following: "And then I got to Memphis, and some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers? Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." King was booked in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel owned by Walter Bailey in Memphis. Ralph Abernathy, who was present at the assassination, testified to the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations that King and his entourage stayed at room 306 so often that it was known as the King-Abernathy Suite. According to Jesse Jackson, who was present, King's last words on the balcony before his assassination were spoken to musician Ben Branch, who was scheduled to perform that night, an event King was attending. "Ben, make sure you play Take My Hand, Precious Lord in the meeting tonight. Play Real Pretty." King was fatally shot by James Earl Ray at 6:01 p.m. Thursday, April 4, 1968, as he stood on the motel's second-floor balcony. The bullet entered through his right cheek, smashing his jaw, then traveled down his spinal cord before lodging in his shoulder. Abernathy heard the shot from inside the motel room and ran to the balcony to find King on the floor. Jackson stated after the shooting that he cradled King's head as King lay on the balcony, but this account was disputed by other colleagues of King. Jackson later changed his statement to say that he had reached out for King after emergency chest surgery. King died at St. Joseph's Hospital at 7:05 p.m. according to biographer Taylor Branch. King's autopsy revealed that though only 39 years old, he had the heart of a 60-year-old, which Branch attributed to the stress of 13 years in the civil rights movement. King was initially interred in Southview Cemetery in South Atlanta, but in 1977 his remains were transferred to a tomb on the site of the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historical Park. Further information: King assassination riots. The assassination led to a nationwide wave of race riots in Washington, D.C., Chicago, Baltimore, Louisville, Kansas City, and dozens of other cities. Presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy was on his way to Indianapolis for a campaign rally when he was informed of King's death. He gave a short, improvised speech to the gathering of supporters, informing them of the tragedy and urging them to continue King's ideal of nonviolence. The following day, he delivered a prepared response in Cleveland. James Farmer Jr. and other civil rights leaders also called for nonviolent action, while the more militant Stokely Carmichael called for a more forceful response. The city of Memphis quickly settled the strike on terms favorable to the sanitation workers' plan to set up a shantytown in Washington, D.C., was carried out soon after the April 4 assassination. Criticism of King's plan was subdued in the wake of his death, and the SCLC received an unprecedented wave of donations for the purpose of carrying it out. The campaign officially began in Memphis on May 2, at the hotel where King was murdered. Thousands of demonstrators arrived on the National Mall and stayed for 6 weeks, establishing a camp they called Resurrection City. President Lyndon B. Johnson tried to quell the riots by making several telephone calls to civil rights leaders. mayors, and governors across the United States and told politicians that they should warn the police against the unwarranted use of force. However, his efforts did not work out. "I'm not getting through," Johnson told his aides. "They're all holding up like generals in a dugout getting ready to watch a war." Johnson declared April 7 a national day of mourning for the civil rights leader. Vice President Hubert Humphrey attended King's funeral on behalf of the president, as there were fears that Johnson's presence might incite protests and perhaps violence. At his widow's request, King's last sermon at Ebenezer Baptist Church was played at the funeral, a recording of his drum major sermon given on February 4, 1968. In that sermon, King made a request that at his funeral no mention of his awards and honors be made, but that it be said that he tried to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, be right on the war question, and love and serve humanity. His good friend Mahalia Jackson sang his favorite hymn, "Take My Hand, Precious Lord." At the funeral, the assassination helped to spur the enactment of the Civil Rights Act of 12 months after King's death. James Earl Ray was on the loose from a previous prison escape, was captured at London Heathrow Airport while trying to leave England on a false Canadian passport. He was using the alias Ramon George Snine on his way to white-ruled Rhodesia. Ray was quickly extradited to Tennessee and charged with King's murder. He confessed to the assassination on March 10, 1969. Though he recanted this confession 3 days later, on the advice of his attorney Percy Foreman, Ray pleaded guilty to avoid a trial conviction and thus the possibility of receiving the death penalty. He was sentenced to a 99-year prison term. Ray later claimed a man he met in Montreal, Quebec, with the alias role was involved and that the assassination was the result of a conspiracy. He spent the remainder of his life attempting, unsuccessfully, to withdraw his guilty plea and secure the trial he never had. Ray died in 1998 at age. Main article, Martin Luther King Jr. Assassination Conspiracy Theorist. Sarcophagus for Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King is within the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historical Park in Atlanta, Georgia. Ray's lawyers maintained he was a scapegoat, similar to the way that John F. Kennedy's assassin Lee Harvey Oswald is seen by conspiracy theorists. Supporters of this assertion said that Ray's confession was given under pressure and that he had been threatened with the death penalty. They admitted that Ray was a thief and burglar, but claimed that he had no record of committing violent crimes with a weapon. However, prison records in different U.S. cities have shown that he was incarcerated on numerous occasions for charges of armed robbery. In a 2008 interview with CNN, Jerry Ray, the younger brother of James Earl Ray, claimed that James was smart and was sometimes able to get away with armed robbery. Jerry Ray said that he had assisted his brother on one such robbery. "I never been with nobody as bold as he is," Jerry said. "He just walked in and put that gun on somebody. It was just like it's an everyday thing." Those suspecting a conspiracy in the assassination point to the 2 successive ballistics tests which proved that a rifle similar to Ray's Remington Gammaster had been the murder weapon. Those tests did not implicate Ray's specific rifle. Witnesses near King at the moment of his death said that the shot came from another location. They said that it came from behind thick shrubbery near the boarding house. White had been cut away in the days following the assassination and not from the boarding house window. However, Ray's fingerprints were found on various objects: a rifle, a pair of binoculars, articles of clothing, a newspaper, that were left in the bathroom where it was determined the gunfire came from. An examination of the rifle containing Ray's fingerprints determined that at least one shot was fired from the firearm at the time of the assassination in 1997. King's son Dexter Scott King met with Ray and publicly supported Ray's efforts to obtain a new trial 2 years later. King's widow Coretta Scott King and the couple's children won a wrongful death claim against Lloyd Jowers and other unknown co-conspirators. Jowers claimed to have received $100,000 to arrange King's assassination. The jury of 6 whites and 6 blacks found in favor of the King family, finding Jowers to be complicit in a conspiracy against King and that government agencies were party to the assassination. William F. Pepper represented the King family in the trial in 2000. The U.S. Department of Justice completed the investigation into Jowers' claims but did not find evidence to support allegations about conspiracy. The investigation report recommended no further investigation unless some new reliable facts are presented. A sister of Jowers admitted that he had fabricated the story so he could make $300,000 from selling the story, and she in turn corroborated his story in order to get some money to pay her income tax in 2002. The New York Times reported that a church minister, Ronald Denton Wilson, claimed his father, Henry Clay Wilson, and James Earl Ray assassinated King. He stated, "It wasn't a racist thing. He thought Martin Luther King was connected with communism, and he wanted to get him out of the way." Wilson provided no evidence to back up his claims. Researchers David Garrow and Gerald Posner disagreed with William F. Pepper's claims that the government killed King. In 2003, Pepper published a book about the long investigation and trial, as well as his representation of James Earl Ray in his bid for a trial, laying out the evidence and criticizing other accounts. King's friend and colleague James Bevel also disputed the argument that Ray acted alone, stating, "There is no way a 10-cent white boy could develop a plan to kill $1 million black man." In 2004, Jesse Jackson's state fact is there were saboteurs to disrupt the march, and within our own organization, we found a very key person who was on the government payroll, so infiltration within, saboteurs from without, and the press attacks. I will never believe that James Earl Ray had the motive, the money, and the mobility to have done it himself. Our government was very involved in setting the stage for, and I think the escape route for, James Earl Ray. Legacy. See also Memorials to Martin Luther King Jr. and a list of streets named after Martin Luther King. Your Martin Luther King Jr. statue over the west entrance of Westminster Abbey, installed in See also Black Consciousness Movement. King's legacy includes influences on the Black Consciousness Movement and Civil Rights Movement in South Africa. King's work was cited by and served as an inspiration for South African leader Albert Lutuli, who fought for racial justice in his country during apartheid and was later awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. See also Northern Ireland Civil Rights Movement. King influenced Irish politician and activist John Hume. Hume, the former leader of the Social Democratic and Labour Party, cited King's legacy as quintessential to the Northern Irish civil rights movement and the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, calling him one of my great heroes of the century. The Martin Luther King Fund and Foundation in the UK was set up as a charity on December 30, 1969, after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and following a visit to the UK in 1969 by his widow. Coretta King Foundation's first chairman, Canon L. John Collins, stated that the foundation was to be an active UK national campaign for racial equality, its work also to include community projects in areas of social need and education. International Personnel IP, an employment agency, was formed in 1970 out of the foundation's base in Balham, in London's Inner Ring South, to find employment for professionally qualified Black people. In its first year, the agency placed 10% of its applicants in jobs equal to their ability. The Balham training scheme operated an evening school at the premises in South London and had a director, coordinator, and 5 lecturers in typing, shorthand, English, and maths. In 1975, Martin Luther King Memorial Lecture, entitled Black People and Employment, was given in the Mahatma Gandhi Hall of the Indian YMCA in London on May 6, 1975, by the Rev. David Shepherd, who was chairman of the fund until his appointment as Bishop of Liverpool in June, or in the late Rs. Wilfred Wood, a Barbadian British Anglican, Bishop of Croydon from 1985 to 2003, the first Black bishop in the Church of England and instrumental in the establishment of the foundation, became its chair. Wood was second in the 100 Great Black Britons list in 2004. The 1989 Martin Luther King Memorial Lecture, entitled "To Overcome is to Undertake," was given by the Rev. Wilfred Wood, Bishop of Croydon. The text is still available. The foundation was removed from the Charity Commission list on November 18, 1996, as it had ceased to exist in the United Kingdom. Today, the Northumbria and Newcastle Universities Martin Luther King Peace Committee still exists to honor King's legacy, as represented by his final visit to the UK to receive an honorary degree from Newcastle University in 1967. The Peace Committee operates out of the chaplaincies of the cities to universities, Northumbria and Newcastle, both of which remain centers for the study of Martin Luther King and the U.S. civil rights movement. Inspired by King's vision, it undertakes a range of activities across the UK as it seeks to build cultures of peace. In 2017, Newcastle University unveiled a bronze statue of King to celebrate the 50th anniversary of his honorary doctorate ceremony. The Students' Union also voted to rename their Bar Luthers banner at the 2012 Republican National Convention. King has become a national icon in the history of American liberalism and American progressivism. His main legacy was to secure progress on civil rights in the U.S. Just days after King's assassination, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Title VIII of the Act, commonly known as the Fair Housing Act, prohibited discrimination in housing and housing-related transactions on the basis of race, religion, or national origin, later expanded to include sex, familial status, and disability. This legislation was seen as a tribute to King's struggle in his final years to combat residential discrimination in the U.S. The day following King's assassination, school teacher Jane Elliott conducted her first Louisa Brown Eyes exercise with her class of elementary school students in Riceville, Iowa. Her purpose was to help them understand King's death as it related to racism, something they little understood as they lived in a predominantly white community. King's wife, Coretta Scott King, followed in her husband's footsteps and was active in matters of social justice and civil rights until her death in 2006. The same year that Martin Luther King was assassinated, she established the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia, dedicated to preserving his legacy and the work of championing nonviolent conflict resolution and tolerance worldwide. Their son, Dexter King, serves as the center's chairman. Daughter Yolanda King, who died in 2007, was a motivational speaker, author, and founder of Higher Ground Productions, an organization specializing in diversity training given within the King family. Members disagree about his religious and political views about gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people. King's widow Coretta publicly said that she believed her husband would have supported gay rights. However, his youngest child, Bernice King, has said publicly that he would have been opposed to gay marriage. In February 4, 1968, at the Ebenezer Baptist Church, in speaking about how he wished to be remembered after his death, King stated he'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. And I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanities. If you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life. Martin Luther King Jr. was among hundreds of artists whose material was destroyed in the 2008 Universal Studios Fire. Main article, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Beginning in 1971, cities such as St. Louis, Missouri, and states established annual holidays to honor King. At the White House Rose Garden on November 2, 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill creating a federal holiday to honor King. Observed for the first time on January 20, 1986, it is called Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Following President George H.W. Bush's 1992 proclamation, the holiday is observed on the third Monday of January each year, near the time of King's birthday. On January 17, 2000, for the first time, Martin Luther King Jr. Day was officially observed in all 50 U.S. states. Arizona 1992, New Hampshire 1999, and Utah 2000 were the last 3 states to recognize the holiday. Utah previously celebrated the holiday at the same time but under the name Human Rights Day. Awards and recognition. King showing his medallion, which he received from Mayor Wagner. King was awarded at least 50 honorary degrees from colleges and universities. On October 14, 1964, King became the youngest winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, which was awarded to him for leading nonviolent resistance to racial prejudice in the U.S. In 1965, He was awarded the American Liberties Medallion by the American Jewish Committee for his exceptional advancement of the principles of human liberty. In his acceptance remarks, King said, "Freedom is one thing. You have it all or you are not free." In 1957, he was awarded the Spingarn Medal from the NAACP. 2 years later, he won the Nisfield Wolf Book Award for his book Stride Toward Freedom, The Montgomery Story. In 1966, the Planned Parenthood Federation of America awarded King the Margaret Sanger Award for his courageous resistance to bigotry and his lifelong dedication to the advancement of social justice and human dignity. Also in 1966, King was elected as a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. In November 1967, he made a 24-hour trip to the United Kingdom to receive an honorary doctorate in civil law from Newcastle University, becoming the first African American the institution had recognized in this way. In a moving impromptu acceptance speech, he said there are three urgent and indeed great problems that we face not only in the United States of America but all over the world today. That is the problem of racism, the problem of poverty, and the problem of working. After receiving his honorary doctorate from Newcastle University in addition to his nominations for 3 Grammy Awards, King posthumously won for Best Spoken Word Recording in 1971 for Why I Oppose the War in Vietnam. In 1977, the Presidential Medal of Freedom was posthumously awarded to King by President Jimmy Carter. The citation read, "Martin Luther King Jr. was the conscience of his generation. He gazed upon the Great Wall of segregation and saw that the power of love could bring it down. From the pain and exhaustion of his fight to fulfill the promises of our founding fathers for our humblest citizens, he wrung his eloquent statement of his dream for America. He made our nation stronger because he made it better. His dream sustained us." Yet King and his wife were also awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. King was second in Gallup's list of most widely admired people of the 20th century. In 1963, he was named Time Person of the Year, and in 2000, he was voted 6th in an online Person of the Century poll by the same magazine. King placed 3rd in the Greatest American contest conducted by the Discovery Channel and AIL. In April 2016, Treasury Secretary Jacob Lew announced that the $5, $10, and $20 bills would all undergo redesign prior to 2020. Lew said that while Lincoln would remain on the front of the $5 bill, the reverse would be redesigned to depict various historical events that had occurred at the Lincoln Memorial. Among the planned designs are images from King's "I Have a Dream" speech and the 1939 concert by opera singer Marian Anderson. Main article, list of memorials to Martin Luther King. Many memorial sites, buildings, and sculptures have been created to honor Martin Luther King Jr., including the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library in Washington, D.C., the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Library, located in downtown San Jose, California, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial located in West Potomac Park next to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Many other memorials has been made in the United States of America and in other countries to honor his legacy. Works: Stride Toward Freedom, The Montgomery Story, 1958, ISBN 978-06-250,000, 490th Measure of a Man, 1959, ISBN 978-08,006, 877, A Strength to Love, 1963, ISBN 978-08,006, 9,740, We Can't Wait, 1964, ISBN 978-08,070, 112, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, 1967, ISBN 978-08,070, 571, A Trumpet of Conscience, 1968, ISBN 978-08,070, 170, A Testament of Hope, The Essential Writings and Speeches of Martin Luther King Jr., 1986, ISBN 978-06-250,000. 931, An Autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr., 1998, ed. Claiborne Carson, ISBN 978-0446, 67,650, Shaw Labor Has Dignity, 2011, ed. Michael Honey, ISBN 978-08,000 and 78,600, Earth Thou, Dear God, Prayers That Open Hearts and Spirits, Collection of King's Prayers, 2011, ed. Lewis Baldwin, ISBN 978-08000 and 78603. Mulk, A Celebration in Word and Image, 2011, photographed by Bob Adelman, introduced by Charles Johnson, ISBN 978-08000 and 73116. 9.